And I don't perceive the road to freedom being one road, but many roads all leading to the same wonderful place in the distance. So, I'm always happy, and my organization is very nonpartisan. I have my personal political views, but we don't actually let that interfere in our support of the movement. We have David Levine, who I've been intimately working with for 6 years, and I consider him virtually a communist some of the time. It never bothers me a minute. Because David gets the work done, and people are going to come from all different walks of life. I love to work with all of them. We have 35, 40 people in our organization. I dare say they all come from incredibly diverse backgrounds. And I never censor any of our people. I never tell them what to say. Dana Larson has never had me tell them to print a word in our magazine ever, nor is David. And David will be glad to tell you this. I never edit any of his work, and I never tell Chris what to broadcast. And everybody works with a lot of freedom, and I think we get the best results in the world by just encouraging people to put forth their creativity. And I think Ted's done a great job, and I would never try and influence him. But Ted brings up a vital point. We live in a world of paradox. On one hand, marijuana is often denigrated as something that will impair you. Like marijuana is an impairment. It'll impair you when you drive. It'll impair you if you're trying to concentrate on your schoolwork. But on the other hand, we have it as a performance-enhancing thing. It's illegal in snowboarding in the Olympics because it has the potential to enhance the performance. The NBA Basketball Association, they say 70% of their players could smoke pot, so now they banned it because it could potentially be performance enhancing. So all throughout our history as marijuana consumers and advocates and believers, is that we're dealing with ignorance on both sides of the fence. People presume that if they can't get us for impairment, they'll get us for enhancement, but either way, we're to be put in jail. And it's like that. I went to high school recently, and I said, here's something you'll never hear of. Do you know the father of English literature, the paragon of all you look up to in English literature? William Shakespeare was a pot smoker. I said the father of the Declaration of Independence was a cannabis grower. And Jesus wore cannabis. Back in the biblical period, there's only flaxen clothes and hempen clothes. There's nothing else. Jesus wore hemp. If you believe in Jesus, if you believe in Christianity and the prophet of Christianity, you've got to believe in cannabis, because he would have been naked otherwise. And you never see him naked in the Bible. In the science class, they don't tell their kids, oh yeah, this is Carl Sagan. He developed 5 accepted physics theories now. He had a great television show. He was a great promoter of modern science. And he smoked marijuana every day of his adult life. Oh, and by the way, the most renowned prime minister who's got a biography on TV tonight, he was a hash smoker. In fact, his son, Justin Trudeau, told me he smoked pot. And that wasn't a big deal in the household. And what a revelation. Yet here's Canada's most famous prime minister himself, who, by the way, never did anything to make these laws change, but nonetheless, Kim Campbell, Prime Minister right from Vancouver here, she smoked marijuana. The last gold medal before the recent spate of gold medals was won by Ross Repliati. He smokes pot. So clearly, we have geniuses in every field, both historical and contemporary, who smoke marijuana. And yet, they're still out to get rid of us. There's still an extermination policy going on in North America in regards to cannabis smokers. There are very few crimes you can commit where you could lose your home, lose your child, lose your job, and be restricted in your travel. You can be a mugger and you can still own a house. You can still own property and you can still keep your kids. You can be a rapist, you can even commit murder, and they will not take your property. But if you grow pot in your own home, and again, Thomas Jefferson, Jesus, Ross Repliati, Pierre Trudeau, diverse, interesting, William Shakespeare, diverse, interesting company, not noted for failure. These are geniuses, these are experts, these are people who are esteemed in their field. And that's what we'll find everywhere. Music, most musicians, great musicians from the jazz era, the blues era, rock and roll era, smoke marijuana. Most major poets of the modern era, from the beatnik generation on to the present, have smoked marijuana. Most great artists have smoked marijuana. Remarkably, many architects and famous physicists and math scientists. When I went to Idea City last year to speak amongst Canada's elite intellectuals, there were very few people who refused to smoke a joint with me, including most of the Canadian scientific community that was there, indulged quite rapidly and actively and eagerly to get all this BC pot that was brought them. In my experience, who are the people opposing marijuana? Because everywhere I go, it's hard to find. I can never debate him. I never had a politician debate me on TV ever. I don't see a single person in Parliament stand up on our behalf, and that's unusual. In Europe, they actually have parliamentarians from England and from parts of Europe who'll stand up and speak on behalf of the cannabis community. Despite the fact that the majority of Canadians want marijuana legal, not a single member of Parliament ever gets up and says anything nice about us. They might be like Keith Martin, well, we should only fine them $200, $500, $1,000 and treat them like scum in every other way, but we shouldn't maybe give them a criminal record. That's about as good as the support gets. No one in the provincial legislatures ever mentioned anything remotely positive about pot smokers, and yet our record is very clear. We're a good group of people who have a lot to contribute to society. Imagine only, for example, if Mr. Trudeau wasn't ever Prime Minister, or if William Shakespeare never wrote a book, or if most of the musicians who spoke pot never wrote a song, or if many of the film directors who've done so on pot never made those movies. We would all be worse off. On contrast, how would we be worse off in the reverse? Where has pot caused damage? Where has pot created harm? Where is our society worse off because people smoke marijuana? I never see any evidence of this.
The police got.
The police count. Well, a lot of us have plenty of experience, but that is the key what I'm going to talk about. The one thing we've missed is who is in favor of prohibition? Who are the main promoters? And I'll tell you one thing, it's just one group alone. Politicians are too ignorant, sloppy, and silent. They say nothing where it's most likely going to cause them some kind of controversy. They're not our enemy. Politicians are like they always have been. They follow like a public opinion like a flock of seagulls. They follow the leader. The police are the enemy. People are reluctant to do this because the police are omnipresent. They're everywhere. But in Canada, in every 8-hour shift, there's over 1,000 police officers every 8 hours looking for marijuana, looking to throw people in jail. There's an arrest made every 6 minutes in Canada, and there's a bust made every 15 minutes in Canada for pot. Cops are non-stop, around the clock, trying to put us away. And furthermore, unlike any other kind of example of police behavior, they lobby against us. You don't see them lobbying for muggers. We need stronger penalties for muggers. Probably we do. Or home invaders. But the police are never there saying we need stronger penalties for them. They're always there saying we need stronger penalties against these grow-ups. They take a political stance where they never take a political stance. They get actively involved in going to schools to badmouth marijuana smokers to kids, whereas they never bother going to schools to explain the dangers of murder, why murder is wrong, why killing is wrong. And yet that could be a potential danger to our society. But they never do that. They only go to attack a group whose lifestyle it is they object to. The police are involved in every step of the way, from enforcement of the bad law that enjoys no public support to creating the environment where we can be demonized by inventing on their websites false assumptions about the strength of marijuana and giving parents an unreasonable need to be concerned about what their children are doing, creating hysteria and fear. And all that is designed to create a need for them. People perceive if there's a danger in society and fear, I need more cops. Because the fact is, if marijuana were legal, we could probably cut the number of police in this society. If we got rid of the war on drugs, we could probably cut the number of police in half. We have about 80,000 police officers in this country right now. We could probably do about half of them. Because when you end the war on drugs, you end a fabulous social problem. The problems of fabulous prices. You know, most of us, we buy an ounce of pot a month, we're paying $3,000 a year for pot. We shouldn't be paying $3,000 a year for pot. We should be paying $500 a year for pot. Pot should be grown in backyards and traded freely and grown in all sorts of greenhouses in a variety of ways. And in fact, because it is so expensive, normal middle-class people like you and I are basically expending our personal treasure unnecessarily year after year. These fabulously expensive amounts of money are going towards paying for pot in an environment that shouldn't be. We could be spending that on our children's education. We could be buying more comfort for ourselves. We could be buying our own home. We could be doing lots of things with that money that we're unfortunately forced by prohibition to spend. So when people say, well, I'm not really affected because I don't get busted, I said, but you know, a good chunk of your life's treasure is going to go to support these black market prices which we have to pay to get marijuana, which is wholly unnecessary. So we're all affected. You know, there's about 50 nations in the world that are completely destabilized now, where there's infighting and paramilitary groups and terrible violence to the indigenous people on the war on drugs, of course propped up by and large by the United States. But these are police regimes. When you look at who benefits by prohibition, it's almost always the police. There are almost no other beneficiaries in Canada. The police run a very, very vicious regime against all of us in this province. And one of the reasons we get involved, I got involved with politics, the marijuana party at the federal level, the provincial level, was because nobody takes these police into account. You know, no cops ever get fired for violating your constitutional rights. I have never seen it. They don't even get suspended without pay. They get suspended with pay. In other words, they get to sit at home and get paid when they do bad things, and cops do bad things all the time in this province. I was busted 2 weeks ago in my home at 3:30 in the morning, the police called up, and I'm not even talking about that. That's a relatively polite exchange. You know, I got called up at 3:30 in the morning and told to go outside in my underwear, and 8 big cops come by and enter my home and go through the place looking for a grow-up that isn't there, and then they go home all looking pouty and disappointed. Well, that's as mild as it gets. You know, every other bust I've ever heard of is way worse than that, including the 4 others I've been involved in, which are way worse than that. So, police are doing terrible things. They're rounding up people, ruining families daily. I mean, let's face it, when they bust a grow up in Vancouver, they bar you so you can't live there anymore. You come home after they've trashed your place. You're responsible for all the damage they've caused that they say is what you did. You know, ripping out all the stuff out of walls and causing terrible damage to the premises. They blame that on the tenant. They lock you out of your place. They won't even charge you, so therefore their warrants are never able to be scrutinized. That's the scam nowadays about why they don't charge people. It's because the police would actually have to go to court and testify. They'd have to prepare evidence. They'd have to do a huge discovery about what it is they found. It would take up way more time. They just are more interested in the terrorist aspects of their job. They just want to inflict terror. They know that all the people they arrest for growing, like whether they're Vietnamese or Caucasian, are completely harmless people who have no connection to any other kind of criminogenic activity at all. I mean, if marijuana were legal, of course, we wouldn't have anything to do with it. But even then, most of the people they arrest, I have never seen a single court record in the last 2 years in British Columbia where the police made an assertion that this person was actually involved in organized crime. They tell that to the media. When they're politicking and propagandizing in the media, they say, oh yes, it's the organized crime connection we're looking for. But when it gets to court, I've never seen a DA, an attorney for the Crown, ever introduce that. They never said, this is a kingpin, or this is an important middleman feeding, you know, thousands of pounds. And it's always just the same anonymous, fill-in-the-blank family person sitting tending a marijuana grow operation. Most likely either growing it for themselves or growing it for the little income it would get them in a part-time capacity. That's all I ever see. Ordinary people like you and me paraded through court, lives get ruined, you have to explain to your employer what's going on, your neighbors are all fearful about you, you can't find an apartment very readily after that, I'll tell you. And your kids risk it taking, 40 children were taken away from their families last year alone by the Vancouver Police Department and put in Child Protective Services. That doesn't happen if you go commit a bank robbery. They don't take your kids away. They need a court order for that. They'd have to make an application. But seemingly, if you've got to grow up, like Coral and I, when we were raided 2 weeks ago, if they'd have found 2 plants there, well, there goes Dylan off to the Child Protection Services, and we get kicked out, and they padlock your place for being unsafe, because you might burn the house down, even though that's happened maybe like twice in the last 2 years in all of Canada, that people, because they had poor electrical hookup, they had burned, the house. And even then, house fires commonly occur throughout Canada at a certain set rate. So if 4 or 5% of the people in Canada are growing pot, then probably that's even the regular statistical amount of pot growers whose houses would burn up. So even then, they use that to terrorize us out of the community. And one of the things that we're doing this fall is I'm running for Mayor of Vancouver on the Vancouver Marijuana Party ticket, and the BC Marijuana Party is glad to contribute finances, your literature, your advertising, and advice to help anyone campaign in the